All right, to my buddy Dan Geltrude, I love the Dan because, hey, he's funny, he has a good sense of humor, but he is also an accountant. He covers the market very well, so he can help me and my dumb questions, and I have a ton for him today. From the accountant side of your fine mind, help me with this and all the CEOs with whom I've been chatting, Dan, who fear, there but by the grace of God go they, that some of them no fans of Donald Trump, but no fans of this legal, what one called a cabal against him, that had no harm parties. They were unaware that this series of rules and laws, whatever you want to call them, has been on the books apparently for many, many decades and never been implemented until now. What do you make of that? Is that a legitimate concern on their part?
Yes, it's definitely legitimate. And you're right, Neil. Let's remove Donald Trump from the equation because he's so polarizing. Regardless of the facts, people will say he's right or wrong depending on how you feel about him. But if you just look at what the facts are related to this case, it's extremely disturbing. Neil, when you have a situation where people are applying for loans and they have to provide personal financial statements to the banks. Those financial statements are based upon estimated value. So now it's really up to the banks to do their due diligence to see whether they agree with those appraised values or estimated values or not. It's not like they're audited, so the bank is going to do their own work on that. Now, in this case, based upon the fact that the banks were willing to lend the money, they took into consideration whatever Trump said and did their own work on it. For this case to go down this path has to have CEOs extremely concerned about the process of getting loans.
No, it just stuck out of my head that obviously this is going to raise a lot of issues here because we've never seen these issues raised prior. But one of the things when I started looking through this decision, frankly, I didn't understand a lot of it, but it goes back to valuations of real estate. And there's one reference in there, I wish I had it in front of me here, where they made a reference to some properties that were many times the average of properties in America. Well, if you're valuing properties, let's say in Palm Beach County, Florida, one of the most exclusive and richest areas on the planet, or New York City, where it isn't a stretch to see penthouses going for $100 million or more, they're different universes. I just found it interesting when they were doing a state of comparison to say, well, this is out of whack with national numbers. Well, those are two very different planetary systems, Palm Beach and New York City. And when I caught that, I thought, that's one thing I understood. What else do you have hidden in here that you've made a big deal out of that isn't warranted? What do you think?
Well, Neil, here it goes to when you talk about the three most important things with real estate: location, location, location. So you're absolutely right. You have to look at what equivalent properties there are in that geographic location. You cannot take a look at the values in New York City and compare those to the values, let's say, in the Midwest, which would get grouped into coming up with a national average for something similar. You can't do it that way. So when you look at how this case was approached, I mean, there's plenty to be concerned about. So it's no wonder that people are looking at this and saying, you know what? Maybe Donald Trump is right. They're specifically going after him because the basis of so many of these things, Neil, just seem completely unreasonable to the layman, like you and I, just looking at this saying it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I hope I'm right on this, but there's a property not too far from Mar-a-Lago that's on the market for, I think, $265 million. It's a beautiful home. It's right on the ocean. But I'm thinking to myself, Mar-a-Lago is like a castle compared to it. So $1 billion or more valuation doesn't seem like a wacky stretch. But again, if you're a lender and you're saying that is a wacky stretch, they're going to relay that to Donald Trump or the syndicate behind his financing and say, all right, this isn't going to fly, because it's in their interests to make sure everything is on the up and up so they get their money back and valuations are deemed realistic enough for them to keep providing money, right?
You're exactly right. Neil, look at the most basic example. When somebody buys an average home and they're applying for a mortgage, in spite of whatever the purchase price is, what does the bank do? They look at what the market value is. And the bank may say, you know what? In spite of the fact that you're paying this much money for that property, it's actually worth less, in our opinion, based on comparable properties. And therefore, we're only going to lend you up to what we believe the value is. So ultimately, Neil, it goes back to the bank. It's their responsibility to figure out what that value is, because they're lending against that value. It doesn't matter what you paid for it. So I think the average American can understand that concept.
Yeah, real estate particularly, Dan, is in the eye of the beholder. Some person's selling price might not be their ultimate purchase price for someone trying to buy it, but it is what it is, and that's the basic 101 on real estate itself. But we'll see how this all sorts out. Dan, thank you very much. Good seeing you.
Thank you, Neil.